الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين. اللهم لك الحمد كله ولك الشكر كله وإليك يرجع الأمر كله وعلانيته وسره، إنك على كل شيء قدير، لك العتبى حتى ترضى، ولا حول ولا قوة يا ربنا لنا إلا بك. اللهم لك الحمد بعدد قطر الأمطار، ولك الحمد بعدد ورق الأشجار، ولك الحمد يا ربنا ما تعاقب علينا الليل والنهار. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله، صفيه من خلقه وحبيبه، النعمة المهداة والرحمة المسداة، خير خلق الله محمد بن عبد الله، صلوات ربي وسلامه عليه وعلى من والاه. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد. اللهم صل وبارك على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم ارض عنا وبارك لنا وتقبل منا وارفعنا وارحمنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. I praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of the worlds, the creator of heavens and earth, the provider, the cherisher, the sustainer, the giver of gifts, the bestower of bounties. I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for health and wealth, for a family. I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessing that is Islam, and I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for making us among the followers of Muhammad. I bear witness that there is no deity in this universe worthy of worship save Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is Allah's final prophet and messenger, the bearer of glad tidings, the role model to be followed, the example for humanity. I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the ni'mah that is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And I ask Allah to give us the strength to walk in the footsteps of Muhammad and to be amongst the followers of Muhammad and those who loved Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in this dunya, and those who will enter Jannah in his company on the day of judgment. Allahumma ameen. My dear brothers and sisters, I greet you with the greeting of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the literature on leadership, we always say that the most effective style of leadership is when we lead by example. Meaning that instead of giving orders and commands and instructions to our followers and subordinates, we need to practice what we want them to do, and that becomes the most efficient way to get them to do it. We see this, for example, in our community. Some of the most effective leaders in our community are ones that do the work themselves, and that inspires us to do it as well. Imagine if there's a leader that tells you you need to serve the food at an event or pick up the garbage while they're sitting somewhere nice, chit-chatting with somebody else. Will you feel the desire to actually do it? Absolutely not. Every single one of us, if you are in a position of leadership in the community, for instance, I need to be more than willing to clean the bathrooms before I ask anyone to clean the bathrooms. I need to be willing to carry the garbage and put it in the dumpster before I request that of anybody. There is nothing that we should request from someone that we are not willing to do ourselves. That is the most effective form of leadership. And we've seen that, if you remember, right after Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, when the companions were so upset thinking that the terms of the treaty were demeaning, to the extent that when the Prophet asked them to cut their hair, they wouldn't. So Salama, his wife, radiallahu anha, told him, Ya Rasulullah, you need to stand up and start cutting your hair, and when they see you cut your hair, they will follow suit. And that is exactly what happened. Now, I hope it does not surprise you if I told you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does the same thing with us. Can you believe it? Allah doesn't request something from us, especially when it comes to values and principles, if He does not abide by it before He requests. He asks us to practice rahmah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls himself Ar-Rahim. He wants us to be just in our dealings with each other. Inna Allah ya'muru bil-adli. He commands that we practice justice, and then he calls himself Al-Adl, subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most just. Allah Azza wa Jal prohibits aggression and injustice. And he says, when he's telling us about that, إِنِّي حَرَّمْتُ الظُّلْمَ عَلَى نَفْسِي. I have made injustice haram. I have made injustice forbidden for me. وَحَرَّمْتُهُ بَيْنَكُمْ. And I have made it forbidden amongst you. Every time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requests something of you, He tells you that I make it binding to me first, before I request it of you. Now listen to this. In the Quran, in Surah Al-Ahzab, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in order to invite us to love Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what does He say in the Quran? He says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا صَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ وَسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. Before He asks us to send salah and taslim upon the Prophet ﷺ, He says what? He says that Allah and His angels, Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. Allah and the angels, they send their salah and taslim upon the Prophet. Before He asks of us, O you who believe, now that you've known that I do this, Allah says, I want you to do the same. Sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. The scholars have debated the matter of how Allah sends salah and taslim upon the Prophet. I mean, you and I do that. Every time the Prophet Muhammad's name is mentioned, we say what? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Or we say alayhi salatu wassalam. But how does Allah send salah and taslim upon the Prophet? It goes back to the meaning of the word salah. Salah is sila. And sila is bond, is connection. And the scholars say, Salatul ibadi taqarrubun wa tabattul. The way we offer salah upon the Prophet ﷺ is a matter of ibadah and a matter of humility. But the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends His salah upon the Prophet ﷺ is a matter of thana, as the scholars say. Praise, meaning Allah mentions the Prophet's name sallallahu alayhi wa sallam by way of honoring him. Amongst the angels, Allah says Muhammad is my closest worshipper. Muhammad is my most beloved. This is Allah's way of sending salah and taslim upon the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. Allah and His angels, they send their salah upon the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam by praising him. Now, if I asked you right now, if you see a brother or a sister in the community praising someone else, every time someone's name is mentioned, they say, oh, this is such an amazing person. This is such a great person. This is such a wonderful person. What will you automatically assume in your mind? That that person loves the other person so much. There's a matter of love involved, right? And here it is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if I asked you right now, who does Allah love more than any other human being on this earth? Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That is not a disputed matter. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam more than He loves any other human being on this earth. Now I need to ask you a question. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what should we expect? We should expect that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will treat him with the utmost blessings, right? I want you to examine something with me and let's see if we can reach the same conclusion. Before the Prophet was born, his father Abdullah passed away. So before the Prophet came to this world, he was an orphan. And then 6 years, he is basically being raised by his mother, partially his mother, but also Halima, his wet nurse. But at the age of 6, his mother wanted to go and visit the grave of his father, Abdullah, in Medina. So she travels, and on her way back, she contracted a disease, probably an infection. She was very young, radiallahu anha wa ardaha. The Prophet's mother, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, And when Amina was on her way back to the city of Mecca, she contracted an illness and she got extremely sick and she died along the way to Mecca in a place that is called Al-Abwa. 6 years into his life, he doesn't have a father and he does not have a mother. He stays with his beloved grandfather Abdul Muttalib for how many years? Only 2 years. And at the age of 8, the Prophet ﷺ becomes an orphan again. And he loses his grandfather that really, really loved him and took care of him. Every time the Prophet overcomes a certain type of pain, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who presumably loves him, subjects him to another form of pain. He is now 25 years old and he falls in love with this amazing woman, Khadija radiallahu anha. And he took her as a wife. And for the longest time, he assumed that the only woman that exists on the face of this earth is Khadija. He couldn't see any other woman. All the Arabs married multiple wives at the time. But his love for Khadija was so overwhelming that he could not even consider the thought of loving another woman or marrying another woman. It was common practice at the time. And then, a few years into the marriage, what happens to Khadija radiallahu anha? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again subjects him to a tremendous amount of pain and took away the love of his life when Khadija passed away. That same year, when he has not even recovered from the pain of losing his wife, who else died in that same year? His uncle Abu Talib, who took care of him and honored him and defended him over the years. To the extent the Prophet ﷺ was so sad that year that they call it Amul Huzn, the year of grief. He desired to have baby boys so much as any parent would. He had girls, but he wanted to have a son. And every time Allah blessed him with a son, what happens? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes the son away. Including Ibrahim. Some scholars say that Ibrahim actually grew and started riding horses. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took Ibrahim from him. And the Prophet ﷺ cries like any parent would cry. I mean, how many of you lost a son or a daughter? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you from that. May you never have to experience the loss of a child ever in your life. He cries, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he sheds tears. And he says, Wallahi inna al-ayna la tadma' wa inna al-qalba la yahzan. My eyes shed tears and my heart is in grief. Wa inna li furaqika ya Ibrahim la mahzunun. And oh Ibrahim, for losing you, I am in so much distress. وَلَكِنَّا لَا نَقُولُ إِلَّا مَا يُرْضِي رَبَّنَا. But I will never utter anything out of my mouth except that which pleases Allah. فَإِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. We belong to Allah, and to Allah we will one day return. Surrenders himself, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, to the decree of Allah Azza wa Jal. Throughout this entire process, he does not complain. He does not despair. He does not say, why me? He does not say every other father has his family and his children and I keep losing mine. But see, the pain doesn't stop there either. How many of the Prophet's kids died in his lifetime? All of them, except one. The only surviving child that only died 6 months after the Prophet passed away, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, is his daughter, Fatima radiallahu anha. Every son or daughter he had died in his lifetime. If any of you experiences the loss of a child, it'll traumatize you for your entire existence. You will never ever stop crying if you've ever lost a child. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect our children and to preserve our children. It's the most precious thing for us. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala subjected the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam again and again and again to a tremendous amount of pain. Pain that the average person cannot endure. His uncle Hamza, that was the closest to him. I mean, think about it. Amongst all of his uncles, who accepted Islam? Most of them either stayed silent or fought him. They fought him. Al-Abbas became Muslim very, very late in the game. Hamza, he was his own age. He was only 2 years older than him. He was an honorable, almost like a knight, like a medieval knight. Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib radiallahu anhu supported him, defended him, and accepted his own faith, and then died. Every time his heart is connected to something beautiful and something good, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes it away from him. Why? Why? If we just said, Inna Allaha malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi, Allah demonstrates His love to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam by saying, I praise Muhammad and I mention Muhammad's name in my own domain, myself and the angels, by way of loving him. If you love someone, why do you take every beautiful thing away from them? Why do you deprive them of the things that they love? If 1/10 of this happened to us today, what would we say? People would lose their faith. They would commit acts of kufr. They will go and get drunk in order to numb the pain. They will take drugs. If 1/10 of these things happen to any of us, it might break us completely. But the Prophet ﷺ never broke under that pain. He never despaired, never complained, never said, why me? كان لسان حال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ربي إن لم يكن بك غضب علي فلا أبالي. His state of mind was very simple. It said, Lord, if you're not angry with me, then there is nothing for me to worry about. I will accept your decree, and I will accept your trials and tribulations, and I will always say, Alhamdulillah. Sometimes we translate pain as a curse from Allah. A brother was just telling me yesterday, he had a very comfortable job where he had to work like 3 hours a day. He was getting paid $8,000 a month. He was driving a Google executive in the Bay Area. From home to work and from work to home, and he paid him $8,000 a month. Very comfortable job. He spent a lot of time with his family, a lot of time with his kids. And then he traveled to Boston. He relocated and moved to Boston, this Google guy. And the brother lost a very comfortable job, and now he had to move to Sacramento, and now he works at a dealership somewhere. He was telling me yesterday, I think I must have done something horrible because God is angry with me, and He took away that blessing from me. And I was preparing the khutbah yesterday, and the ideas are in my head, and I wanted to tell him, Ya Allah, you haven't experienced 1% of any pain yet. You have not seen the least of it yet. You call this pain? You have your mom that lives with you, you have your wife, your children, you have your health, you have a job. It may not pay you the same, and it may not be as comfortable, but it is a job, and many people don't have jobs. Why don't you just say Alhamdulillah? We often translate deprivation, we often translate pain as an expression of God's anger. But it's not, brothers and sisters of Allah. It's not. Pain is not necessarily a demonstration of God's anger. Most of the time, the pain that we go through is a reflection of God's utmost love for us. Allah's utmost love for you can be reflected in some pain that you go through in your life. Next time you lose a job, your health is having issues, you have mental or physical problems, you have financial problems, you have relationship problems. Anytime you're going through struggles, you need to remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is propelling you to action. He's redirecting your life because you've been complacent and you've been lazy and you've taken things for granted, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to shake things up a little bit for you. See, what pain does when it doesn't break our backs and paralyze us, when pain doesn't paralyze us, what it really does is refine us, purify us, define our mission or redefine it. What pain does is that it gives us a newfound appreciation for life. You will never enjoy the sun on a beautiful day such as today if you don't experience the darkness of the night. You cannot enjoy wealth if you haven't tasted poverty. You know, many parents who are doing very well to do financially, what is their biggest concern? Is that their kids grow up in the luxury and they take it for granted, and because they've never tasted poverty. They've never tasted the pinch of deprivation and want. I always say to parents, Your financial state doesn't matter. You still need to say no to your kids. You have to say no. You don't give them what they want just because you can afford it. Well, alhamdulillah, I'm well-to-do. I make 200,000 a year. Why not? I give my kids everything they want. You know, my kids are the most important thing to me. That's how you corrupt your children. That's how you destroy your children. You need to, I'm not saying become an annoying parent that says no every single time. You have to be reasonable. But sometimes the kids request things. You need to say, no, not now. Inshallah, I'll think about it. Don't rush to say yes every single time. No. This is not good parenting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deprives you so that you develop a sense of mission in your life. When you are struggling financially, then your focus is to improve your state. If you have a health concern, that becomes the focal point of your life. And then you need to be healthy. If you are overweight, the mission of your existence is to get in shape and get to the gym and become healthy. Without a sense of deprivation or pain, there is no purpose. There is no purpose for existence. And that is why the highest rates of suicide in the world is not in Somalia or Kashmir or in poor countries. Why? Because people who are poor, they have no time for depression. You got to get up in the morning and hustle. Depression is a luxury. I don't mean to, again, speak ill of people who suffer from mental health problems. Some forms of depression are pathological and they're very, very serious. And we have to take it extremely seriously. And you talk to your doctor about it. We're not making fun of that. But I'm just saying people who have a sense of purpose, they are not subject to habitual depression, which many of us go through on an ongoing basis. Why? Because there's a sense of mission. Pain drives your life. If you are tasting sweet all the time, you will lose appreciation for it. You have to eat salty food to contrast it with what is sweet. If your life is always comfortable, you will gradually lose interest in life itself. The reason you're here today attending Jum'ah is because there is a struggle in your life. There is an unfulfilled request to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a dua that hasn't been answered. There's a child that you're struggling with. There's a financial problem. There is your spouse that is giving you a hard time. There is an issue in your life. And you keep seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because you want to recover from that issue. If you have no problems whatsoever, what is going to happen? You will lose the channel with Allah Azza wa Jal and you'll go find your pleasure somewhere else. The Prophet ﷺ was subjected to pain in his life because he needed to be prepared for a mission to change the world. He has to be able to relate to people that struggle. In this country, you cannot talk to someone who lost a father, for example, if you have your own father. If you say, I understand what you're going through, they'll say, no, you don't. You don't understand what I'm going through. I lost my dad, your dad is still alive. Don't patronize me. Don't tell me that you understand. You don't understand what I'm going through, right? This is very common. And that's why in our conversations, out of courtesy, we need to say, well, I can't claim to understand what you're going through, but you have my sympathies. See, you have to be insightful in the way you offer condolences to people or the way you relate to their pain. But the Prophet ﷺ went through everything. He is able to relate to the orphans because he was an orphan. He was able to relate to those who lost their children because he lost his children. He was able to relate to the widowed because he was widowed. He was able to relate to the poor because he was poor. He was able to relate to those who had wealth because he accumulated wealth at some point. The Prophet ﷺ went through the struggles of life, and that's why he was able to relate to people. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala subjects you through pain, don't take that as a curse. God is angry with me. God singles me out. God hates me. God is not even interested. God is not looking at me. Or worse, God is not even there. Why am I wasting my time? It's so easy for people to lose faith. The Prophet ﷺ goes through layer after layer after layer of pain, and he continues to strive. And he continues to say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Lord, if you're not angry with me, there's nothing for me to worry about. It is important to have this conversation today, because if the Prophet's memory of birth was yesterday, the 12th of Rabi'ul Awwal, today is the 13th, it would be a complete, utter negligence on our part not to talk about the beloved sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And mentioning Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in the event of his birth is an extremely important matter, because when he was asked sallallahu alayhi wasallam himself, why did you fast on Mondays? He said, I fast on Mondays because this is the day on which I was born. هَذَا يَوْمٌ وُلِدْتُ فِيهِ. There is an importance to that day. If you as a Muslim in your heart do not feel a sense of happiness on the day the messenger came to this world, then there is something wrong with the way we think of him, alayhi salatu wasalam, with the way we perceive of him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Whether or not we should celebrate Mawlid and all these other considerations, that's aside from the point. Community will always be divided about that. But every single one of us needs to feel a sense of happiness in the heart on the day the Prophet ﷺ came to this world. That is a given, right? Now I wanted you to pay attention to a few thoughts that I wanted to share in this khutbah, inshallah. Number one, every time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala subjects you through pain, try to read between the lines and ask yourself, what is Allah preparing me for? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me to pay attention to something else. He wants to redirect my energy, subhanahu wa ta'ala. He wants me to relate to somebody else. If you lost wealth, for example, and you struggled for a number of years, and then you were able to regain your wealth, alhamdulillah, now you're financially stable. Don't you think that you should be more inclined to give? I mean, one of the most honorable things that we appreciate about America, about American culture, is that people always want to give back. So if someone did you a favor, you want to do a favor upon someone else. If someone mentored you to become so effective in your job, you want to find somebody else to mentor, because this is how we pay back, right? This is how we show a sense of gratitude to the blessings. If someone gave you advice, you need to go and give advice to someone else. If someone helped with your marriage, then you need to find someone that is struggling with their marriage and help them. If someone helped you move from one apartment or one house to the other, then you need to find someone that is moving to help them, right? So we have to find a way to give back in meaningful fashion, right? Now, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala subjected him to tremendous struggles in his life that made him able to relate to children and the struggles of children, that made him able to relate to the struggles of women, that made him able to relate to the struggles of the poor and the needy and the slaves and the disenfranchised and the disillusioned, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when Allah subjects you to pain, ask yourself, when I recover from this pain, who am I going to help? When I get my health back, am I going to help someone that is struggling with their health? When I get my money back, will I help someone that needs my help? That has to be the state of your mind. Because you know what? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you back, and this is what we say to our little kids, if you don't show gratitude to Allah Azza wa Jal, what is Allah going to do? He might take it back from you. The way to show gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is by giving. And since Allah aghna al-aghniya, He is the richest of the richest, He doesn't need anything from us. It is other human beings that need from us. You want to honor Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you find someone else to help. That is the point. There was this young kid at the Prophet's time. His name was Mahmud. Mahmud came and the Prophet was making wudu, alayhi salatu wassalam. Now you have to understand, Arabian society, Meccan society was a harsh society. They did not necessarily appreciate little kids. They were harsh. They were edgy. They did not smile. They were not tender. They were very harsh people, hardened by battle and hardened by the desert. But the Prophet ﷺ was very tender in the way he treated people. So Mahmud comes to the room and the Prophet was making wudu, ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ, as sometimes we jokingly did, he was rinsing his mouth with water. So there was some water in his mouth, so he kind of, he blew some water on Mahmud, jokingly. It's a very innocuous act of affection, something that, we might do with each other. The Prophet ﷺ is in his late 40s, and Mahmud is 5 years old. And the Prophet ﷺ blew some water in Mahmud's face. And what does Mahmud say about that event, that incident? See what we do with little kids? Those of us who come to the masjid and pray and then treat the children harshly because they're making noise. What do you think the kids are going to do if they don't make noise? If they're not making noise, that we're going to be concerned about their mental health. If kids are not running around and jumping around and creating noise, that means there's something wrong with them. But we treat the kid harshly, and you take the child on the side and you yell at them. And you tell them, this is Allah's house, you have to show respect. And all they gather is just that negative association with the masjid. And then they grow up hating the masjid. And hating people with beards. And hating religion because of just one incident. Does that happen or not? Happens all the time. I can't tell you how many young people tell me, I stopped going to the masjid because of things that happened when I was a little kid. That the way they treated me at the masjid when I was a child. On the other hand, the Prophet ﷺ, he affectionately blew water, a little bit of water, not so much, right? A little bit of water, majja. Mahmud describes it as majja. He says in the hadith, عقلت وأنا ابن 5 سنين على مجة مجها النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في وجهي. What does that mean? He says, I became conscious of the world. I felt like a man. I felt like I was treated like a man, like an equal, like a peer. When he acknowledged my presence and my existence, and he did not dismiss me like I'm nothing. And he joked with me, and he was humorous with me, and he was tender with me. I became conscious of who I was as a human being when I was 5 years old, when the Prophet ﷺ blew some water in my face. Very simple incident. And by the way, that is the only hadith that this Sahabi narrated. We don't know anything else about him. Nothing. The only noteworthy thing that he found to narrate after the Prophet ﷺ was the humor that the Prophet expressed with him, alayhi salatu wasalam. How do we treat children? Sometimes not very nice. Our children, somebody else's children, when you are at the masjid, let the kids play and let them make a noise. It's okay. You're not going to die because the kids are making noise and you're not able to enjoy your experience in full. Tune them out. We will find ways to talk to their parents and, try to help the kids focus. And if they're making tremendous noise, take them outside, bring them back. But the children, over the years, they need to develop a positive association with the deen, with the masjid, with you. Because they see the deen through you, the adults. If all the children in the community say, I loved Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because everyone treated me with love. I was loved in my masjid. All the religious people that come to the masjid, they treated me with honor and dignity. And they acknowledged my presence. They did not treat me like a kid, get out of here. Go pray in the back. Why? Get the children to pray next to the adults. One adult, one child, one adult, 12 child. What's wrong with that? Oh, there's going to be a gap in the lines. Allah, that's the problem. There will be gaps anyway. But let the kids learn. And the way they learn is by interacting with us in our social gatherings. What usually happens? Women are here, men are there, and we find like a basement or like a small room and we put all the kids away. Put them in the backyard. Take them somewhere else. Right? And then they're interacting with each other and learning from each other and reflecting upon each other and absorbing bad habits from each other. How did we learn as adults? When we were kids and we interacted with other adults. Learn from our parents, from our uncles, from my dad's friends, from people in the community. This is how we learn. When somebody else comes to me and says, Muhammad, this is how it's done. You show respect this way. And with love and affection and a hug and a kiss. That's how we do it. And the Prophet ﷺ understood this simple lesson of parenting, and he put life and dignity and honor into the heart of this young man that he remembered it for the rest of his life. The Prophet ﷺ did not discriminate in his love, brothers and sisters. He offered unconditional love to everyone. I mean, all of us discriminate one way or the other. We may favor people that speak our language, or people that come from our ethnic background, or people that belong to our faith, but the Prophet's love was unconditional to everyone. You know the story of Adi ibn Hatim al-Ta'i. He was a king of his people, comes to the city of Medina in order to investigate. Muhammad ﷺ sent him a message, inviting him to Islam. So he is a decent man. He's a reasonable man. He comes in order to check it out himself. He comes to Medina, and the Prophet ﷺ, sort of received him in a very humble and simple way, held his hand like this, and walked around the streets of Medina, giving him the grand tour. Suddenly, an elderly woman who is a slave came to the Prophet ﷺ and told him, Ya Rasulullah, can I talk to you? He says, yeah, please, go ahead. She said, can I talk to you on the side? So he had to leave his guest, the royalty, and go talk to a slave on the side, an elderly woman. And she told him, Ya Rasulullah, the person, my slave master is harsh, and he asks me to carry heavy things, and I'm an old woman and I can't do it anymore. So he says to the king, pardon me, I need to just go with this lady to run an errand with her, and I'll come back to you. He goes and he talks to her slave master. He convinces him that he needs to treat her better, and then he comes back to his guest. And Adi ibn Hatim al-Ta'i made up his mind right then and there. He was a decent human being. He says, Wallahi, this is not the ethic of a king. ليست هذه أخلاق الملوك. This is not what kings do. Kings will treat other people with arrogance. وإنما هذه أخلاق النبوة. This truly is the ethic of a prophet. And in his heart he knew that Muhammad ﷺ was a messenger from Allah Azza wa Jal. Again, by him being able to relate to people regardless of man, woman, poor, white, black, it didn't matter for the Prophet ﷺ. Every human being had value in and of themselves. So I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to continue to inspire us with the love, with the life and legacy of the Prophet ﷺ. And I ask Allah to make us among those who try to learn and find ways to love Rasulullah ﷺ and to live by that life in their lives. Brothers and sisters, raise your hands and speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the heart. ادعوا الله وأنتم موقنون بالإجابة. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين به ونستهديه ونستغفره. ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأصلي وأسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين وقائد الغر الميامين محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه والتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وارض عنا معهم بفضلك وكرمك أرحم الراحمين اللهم آمين. My dear brothers and sisters, just a reminder today that following the Prophet ﷺ and loving him are two flip sides of the same coin. We are supposed to obviously follow the Sunnah and understand the boundaries and stand beyond those boundaries, within those boundaries. But we also need to find a way to connect emotionally with the Prophet ﷺ. It'll make our acts of worship much easier. It'll make our ability to follow him much easier, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And today I talk to you about how the Prophet was subjected to a lot of pain by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to make him able to relate to other human beings regardless of where they come from or what they do. And I wanted to conclude with a very quick story about a man. His name was Zahir ibn Hiram al-Ashja'i. And the story of Zahir is a very commonly cited story because he was a dairy merchant. He did not smell very well. And he was extremely destitute. He had a little table, a little stand where he sold his yogurt and his milk at the market. But every time he came to Medina, he would stop by the Prophet's house in order to leave him something. And so the Prophet came home and he smelled the milk in his house and he asked his wife Aisha, was Zahir here? And she said, yes. Where did he go? She said, I don't know. So he left in order to look for Zahir and he found him in the marketplace, kind of standing and selling his stuff. And Zahir did not look very fresh. He did not smell very fresh. He was always sweating because he's standing in the sun all day long. And the Prophet, on the other hand, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was the epitome of beauty and honor. Anas ibn Malik speaks of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and he says that every time I shake his hands and smell it, كلما سلمت على رسول الله وشممت يدي فكأنما أخرجتها من جؤنة العطار. Every time I shake his hands and I smell my hands, it's almost like I took my hands out of the container in which they make perfume. always smelled so beautiful, alayhi salatu wassalam. The Sahaba used to say, every time we look at the Messenger and we look at the moon, we're confused. Which one is more beautiful? فَوَاللَّهِ لَرَسُولُ اللَّهِ أَحَبُّ إِلَيَّ مِنَ الْقَمَرِ فِي لَيْلَةِ التَّمَامِ. The face of the Prophet is more beautiful than the full moon in their eyes, alayhi salatu wassalam. Always wore the best suits, put on perfume. He was خَيْرُ خَلْقِ اللَّهِ سَيِّدُ وَلَدِ آدَمَ, as he describes himself, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Yet, he brings himself with humility and love and affection naturally. He's not manufacturing anything. He's not making it up. He's not trying to score points or be politically correct. He's not waiting for an audience to say, oh, look at Muhammad, he's very humble, he's a great leader. No. He goes to the marketplace and he held Zahir from the back, held him tight. Zahir didn't know who it was. Sometimes we do that affectionately with each other. Right? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He held Zahir so tight. And Zahir said, who is this? The Prophet didn't respond. Arsilni, he said, let go of me. And the Prophet ﷺ would not let go of him. I said, let go of me. And the Prophet ﷺ, hey Zahir, take it easy. Oh my goodness, it's Rasulullah. And that's, so he looked like this. He saw the Messenger ﷺ, and then he looked back and he was so comfortable, as in, hold me all you want, Messenger of Allah. So Prophet ﷺ jokingly said, Man yashtari al-abd? Who wants to buy this slave? And he raised his hands like, who wants to buy this slave right here? Jokingly, right? And that's when Zahir smiled, Atabi'uni ya Rasulullah? You want to sell me, Messenger of Allah? إِذَنْ لَتَجِدُنِي كَاسِدًا. You will find me a commodity that doesn't sell. I'm nothing. I'm poor, I'm destitute, I don't wear nice clothes, I don't smell great. Go find someone else to sell because, I'm not going to make you that much money. And that's when the Prophet turned him around, held him from his shoulders and looked him in the eye and said, وَلَكِنَّكَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ غَالٍ. People may think that you are cheap and you're a commodity that doesn't sell, but in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are honorable, you're expensive. You don't have to ever say anything like that. Don't think like this about yourself. What matters is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees you. The question, brothers and sisters, and let me end with this, what type of inspiration do we put in other people's hearts when we talk to them? What type of mark do we leave on their hearts when we walk away? When you have a conversation with someone and you left them, even if it's about the deen, even if that person is sinful, even if that person is a horrible human being, when I talk to them, what type of impression do I leave? When I leave, they say, you know what, that's a good person. That's an inspiring, that's an insightful human being. Or are they going to find an excuse not to listen to you? It's a judgmental person, he's an arrogant person. You know what? I'm never going to want to see them again. It's very easy for us to act like this. What type of impression do we leave on other people's hearts? The reason we love the Prophet ﷺ today, 1400 years after he passed away, is because he offered people his unconditional love, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, including sinners. He treated them with compassion, found ways to bring them to the deen, to reel them in. The ideology of iqamatul hujjah. I just need to let them know what's right and what is wrong, and then they can do whatever they want. That is not the way of the prophets. The prophets went out of their way to bring people to the path. And not iqamatul hujjah. Here it is, this is right, this is wrong, and the rest is up to you. No. This is not the way of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The way of Muhammad is to be creative. If I can't say it today, I'll say it tomorrow. I will plant a small seed today and another seed next year. It's a lifetime of commitment to inspiring people. It may work in my lifetime and it may not work, but I will continue to act with that compassion because that is the way of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this day to forgive us our sins, to establish us with firmness on His path. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fill our hearts with the love of Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. I ask Allah to let our children taste the sweetness of loving Rasulullah in their hearts. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make the love of Muhammad our way into salvation. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we've loved the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the life of this world, that we will be admitted to Jannah in his company. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He would not separate between us and Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. I ask Allah to make us among those who drink water from the Prophet's hands. I ask Allah to be among those who will be interceded on their behalf by the Prophet ﷺ. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the strength to follow in the Prophet's footsteps, to follow his boundaries, and to be inspired by his character, and to accept his sunnah as binding. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we've loved him in the life of this world, to make us among those who will enter Jannah in his company on the day of judgment. Allahumma ameen.